The first time her hand brushed mine, it felt like something accidental. But it wasn't. It lingered, just long enough to make me forget what I was saying. She was standing close enough for me to smell the faint trace of jasmine and rain on her coat. 40, maybe 41. The kind of woman who didn't need attention to draw it. She carried a quiet gravity that made the world slow down a little when she entered the room. I remember thinking she looked like someone who'd learned how to hide everything she felt, and still, somehow, it slipped through, in the way she adjusted her sleeve, or the half-smile that never fully reached her eyes. I was 24, helping out at the university gallery part-time. She was a guest lecturer, invited for her photography exhibit. Light Between Us. Even the title felt like something she'd written about someone, not just her art. That afternoon, the space was almost empty. Just the hum of soft jazz from the speakers and the smell of coffee someone had spilled hours ago. I was fixing a frame when she walked in. "You hung it too low," she said, voice soft but amused. I turned. "You sure? The center's right at eye level." She stepped closer, too close. "For you," she murmured. "Not for me." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes stayed steady on mine. Dark brown, steady, unreadable. I didn't move. Neither did she. It was a small moment, nothing dramatic. Just two people standing in a quiet room, the air thick enough to feel. Her perfume, subtle and expensive, caught the light breeze from the door. My hand, still holding the frame, felt suddenly heavy. When she reached out to tilt it slightly, her fingers brushed against mine. The touch was feather-light, hesitant, testing, like she was waiting to see if I'd pull away. I didn't. The silence stretched. The distance between our hands became unbearable. "I didn't mean to," she began, pulling back. But her voice faltered before the sentence finished. Something in her eyes changed, softened, or maybe broke, just for a heartbeat. Later, I told myself I imagined it. That maybe she just pitied my awkwardness, or was lost in thought. But in that moment, she looked at me the way people look when they're remembering something they shouldn't. We spent the next hour pretending to work. She talked about light, how it hides in ordinary things. I nodded, though I'd barely heard her words. Every time she stepped near, the space between us grew warmer, harder to ignore. When she leaned over to check another frame, her shoulder brushed mine again. Not hesitant this time. Not quite deliberate either, just enough. The jazz faded into silence. The ticking of the wall clock filled the room. Her voice dropped, barely a whisper. "You notice everything, don't you?" I froze. "Only what stands out." A small, knowing smile tugged at her lips. She turned toward the door, gathering her scarf, her fingers trembling for the first time. "Well," she said, eyes lingering on me longer than they should have. "Then I suppose I'll have to be careful around you." She started to leave, her heels echoing softly across the wooden floor. I thought she'd walk out completely, and then she paused by the doorway. Without turning, she said, "You hung it just right." And before I could respond, before I could ask what she meant, or why her voice sounded like a secret, the door opened behind her, and someone called her name. The spell broke, but the silence she left behind stayed heavy in my chest, like the warmth of her hand hadn't faded yet. She came back to the gallery the next week. No announcement. No reason. Just appeared, same soft perfume, same quiet confidence that didn't need attention to be noticed. This time, she wasn't the guest speaker. She was just her. A woman with too much time between classes, or maybe someone who wanted to see if the room still remembered her. I was rearranging one of the smaller exhibits when I heard her voice behind me. "You missed a spot." I turned, smiling before I could stop myself. "You're really starting to make me self-conscious about my job." She shrugged, faint amusement in her eyes. "You make it too easy." That was her thing, teasing, just enough to keep distance wrapped inside the warmth. But beneath it, there was something else. Something careful. We talked, about light again, about composition, about her students. But every conversation felt like a slow walk along a line neither of us wanted to admit existed. She told me she'd been divorced for years. We were better at being polite than being in love, she said, looking at the wall instead of me. And eventually, that stops being enough. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. Silence filled in the spaces where comfort should have been. She turned back, smiling faintly. You're quiet. I like that. People my age forget how to listen. I wanted to tell her I was quiet because every time she spoke, I caught myself memorizing the way her mouth formed words, the way her voice dipped on certain syllables. But I just nodded. There were reasons this felt dangerous. The age difference, sure, but it was more than that. She carried an entire life behind her eyes, mistakes, maybe regrets. I had no right to reach for someone who looked like she'd already been reached for too many times. And yet I couldn't stop noticing. The way her hand brushed her hair behind her ear when she got nervous. The soft exhale before she said something she didn't mean to say. The warmth that lingered when she leaned close to point at a photo. Once, her shoulder brushed mine as she moved past. I didn't step away. She didn't either. We both froze, her breath close enough to feel. The silence felt louder than any sound in the room. I should, she began, voice low, unsure. I swallowed. Yeah. But neither of us moved. Finally, she reached out, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, a gesture too brief to mean anything and too intimate to mean nothing. Don't stay here too late, she said, her tone suddenly softer. It gets cold. Then she left, the faint scent of jasmine and rain trailing behind her like the echo of something unfinished. When I turned to look at the photo she'd been staring at, two people caught in the reflection of a window, almost touching, I understood why she'd come back. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if she'd ever really left out. A small photography lecture had ended, and most people had already left. She lingered behind, standing by the window, her reflection half blended with the city lights outside. I was cleaning up cables and stray pamphlets, pretending not to notice how she stayed, pretending not to wonder why. You don't have to keep working when everyone's gone, she said. I smiled faintly. Maybe I like the quiet. She turned, eyebrow raised. You always say that, but you don't look like someone who enjoys being alone. The words landed heavier than I expected. I froze, pretending to rearrange the papers again. She stepped closer, slow, hesitant. The room had dimmed. Only one lamp by the projector still glowed, soft and golden. Her voice was lower now. It's strange, isn't it? How some silences feel full. I looked up, and there it was, that same pause from the first day. The kind that makes breathing feel like a secret. Her hand brushed the table between us, fingertips grazing mine. For a moment I thought she was going to pull away, but she didn't. My heart beat too loud in my chest. Then, a knock at the door. We both jumped. The lightest sound, but it shattered everything. A colleague poked his head in. Elena? You left your notes in the hall. She turned, her posture shifting instantly, composed, distant, polite. Thank you, she said, her voice steady again. He nodded and left. The door closed. Silence returned, but it wasn't the same. She didn't move right away. Neither did I. Her back was still to me, her hand resting on the table. I could see her shoulders rise with a slow, deliberate breath. I can't, she whispered. It's not supposed to, I know. My voice broke before I could stop it. But you keep coming back. That made her turn. Her eyes, sharp, uncertain, found mine again. Maybe, she said softly. I'm not as careful as I used to be. She took a step forward. I took one without thinking. We stood there, inches apart, not touching, but it felt like we already were. Her perfume mixed with the faint scent of dust and old projector heat. If I leaned forward even slightly, our foreheads would have met. If she breathed any closer, I would have kissed her. But she didn't move. Instead, she whispered, People talk. They always do. I don't care. Yes, you do. Her words trembled, but her gaze didn't. The space between us pulsed, a heartbeat suspended in air. And then, quietly, she reached up, her fingers hovering near my jaw, not quite touching, just close enough for the warmth to reach. Her lips parted as if to say something, but no sound came. The door creaked again in the distance. We both turned, startled, and when we looked back, either of us had stepped away. That was how it began, not with a kiss, not with a promise, just two people standing too close, pretending they weren't already falling. It was late, long after everyone had gone. The gallery lights were dimmed, leaving only the soft blue glow from the street filtering through the tall windows. She had stayed behind again, this time without an excuse. I didn't ask why. I just stayed too. For a while, we pretended to work, her sorting through photos, me stacking frames, until the silence grew too deep to hide inside. "You shouldn't be here this late," she said, not looking up. "Neither should you." That made her smile, barely. "I have a reason." "So do I." She set the papers down, finally meeting my eyes. "And what reason is that?" I took a breath I couldn't quite steady. "You." The word hung there, heavier than I expected, truer than I meant to say. Something in her expression broke then, not visibly, but enough. The guard she always wore slipped for just a second. She stood, slow, deliberate. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I might believe you." Her voice cracked slightly at the end, the kind of crack you don't hear unless you're already too close. I stepped toward her. She didn't move back. Her perfume, her warmth, the faint tremor in her breath, all of it pulled me in. I could see the small line at the corner of her mouth, the way her lips parted like she was about to speak and couldn't. "Do you?" I whispered. Her eyes lifted to mine, searching, conflicted. "Do I what?" "Believe me." She exhaled, long and shaky. "I'm trying not to." My hand moved before I could stop it, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her breath caught, not because of surprise, but because she didn't pull away. The silence turned dense, electric. Her hand rose, almost involuntarily, resting against my chest. Through my shirt, I could feel her fingers trembling. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "I know." "Then why aren't we stopping?" "Because we've already crossed it." Her eyes softened, the fight in them dissolving into something raw, something real. For a heartbeat, either of us breathed. She leaned closer, her forehead nearly touching mine. Her voice dropped to a whisper near my ear. "You have no idea what you're doing to me." "I think I do." The words barely left my lips before her fingers slid higher, brushing the side of my neck. My pulse kicked against her palm. And then, a sound from the hallway. The creak of the door handle turning. We froze. Her eyes widened, her hand still against my skin. The moment, fragile, burning, unstoppable, hung suspended between what was and what almost was. The door began to open. She whispered, breathless, "Don't move." And I couldn't, because even if the world had walked in, it would have found us right there, on the edge of something neither of us could take back. The next morning, she didn't show up. Her absence felt louder than her presence ever had, like the whole space was holding its breath, waiting for her to walk in. By noon, I gave up pretending to work and went to find her. Her office door was half open, light slanting across the desk. She was there, standing by the window, arms folded, back straight, as if she'd been rehearsing how to say something she didn't want to. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "That's starting to sound like a habit." She didn't turn around. "Someone saw us last night." My heart stilled. "Who?" Her voice wavered. "It doesn't matter who. What matters is it's out." I took a step closer, careful. "Did you tell them anything?" She finally faced me. Her eyes looked tired, not from sleep, but from holding something in too long. "No. I told them they imagined it." "And did they?" Her lips curved, but not into a smile. "I wish they had." For a long moment either of us spoke. The air between us felt thick, weighted with all the things we'd nearly said last night. Then she walked toward me, slow, measured. When she passed, her shoulder brushed mine, a touch so slight it shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. "I can't do this," she murmured. "Do what?" "Pretend I don't want to." The words hit harder than a confession. She looked up at me then, eyes flickering with something unsteady, desire laced with fear. "Last night, if that door hadn't opened, I know. And I don't know if I'm relieved or not." The silence after that was unbearable. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, not harshly, just enough to make it hurt. "I've spent half my life trying not to need anyone," she said softly. "And now you?" Her voice trembled, and before I could answer, she reached into the drawer and pulled out her phone. "There's something I didn't tell you." She unlocked it and held the screen out toward me. A message thread glowed in the light, my name, her name, and another name I didn't recognize. "He knows," she whispered. "Who?" "My ex. He still checks. He saw your name, the calls. He knows I've been staying late." The floor seemed to shift beneath me. "And what does that mean?" "It means this." She gestured between us, her voice breaking. "Isn't private anymore." I swallowed hard. "Do you want me to stop coming?" Her eyes closed for a second, like the question hurt. "I should say yes." "But—" Her gaze found mine again, no longer guarded, just raw. "But if I say yes, I'll regret it." We stood there, the hum of the city beyond the window, her breath shallow, my pulse unsteady. Finally, she whispered, "Come tonight. One last time." Her hand brushed mine, brief, burning, deliberate. And just like that, everything safe about us was gone. Her apartment smelled faintly of rain, the kind that clings to clothes, soft and electric at once. I hesitated at the door, every sensible thought screaming to turn back. But she was already there, waiting. She didn't speak at first. Just stood near the window, hair loose, wearing a simple gray sweater that hung slightly off one shoulder. The city lights outside flickered across her skin. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure I should." Her lips twitched, somewhere between a smile and a sigh. "And yet you're here." I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. The soft click felt final, like a promise we weren't supposed to make. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air was heavy, stretched thin with everything unspoken. Then she turned, slowly, meeting my eyes. "Say something," she whispered. "I can't," I said. "Everything I want to say sounds like a mistake." She took a step closer. "Then don't say it. Just stay." Her words were barely audible, trembling on the edge of control. We were inches apart now, her breath ghosting across my throat, the scent of rain and warmth, and something unsteady between us. My hands hovered, afraid to touch, afraid not to. "Do you ever think about what happens after?" I asked. "All the time," she said. "And it never ends well." "So why?" "Because for once," she interrupted, "I don't want to be careful." That broke something in me, the restraint, the fear, the logic. I reached up, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't pull away. Her eyes fluttered closed, just for a second, like she'd been waiting for that single touch. Her fingers found my wrist, holding it there against her skin. "You make me forget who I'm supposed to be," she whispered. "And who's that?" "Someone who knows better." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, with the sound of breath, of hearts beating too loud, of everything that couldn't be said out loud. I could have kissed her. She could have let me. But instead, she leaned her forehead against mine, her voice breaking into a whisper. "If this is the line," she said, "tell me when to stop." I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Her hand slipped to my chest, over my heartbeat. "You're trembling. So are you." Then, softly, she laughed, not from joy, but from surrender. "Maybe we both already crossed it." When she finally looked up again, her eyes weren't questioning anymore. They were clear, full of understanding, not regret. I didn't need to say anything. Neither did she. Whatever happened next, whether we stepped closer or walked away, didn't matter as much as the truth sitting quietly between us, we both knew. And that knowing changed everything. Morning light filtered through the half-closed curtains, soft and golden, touching everything it found, the scattered coffee mugs, the raincoat draped over the chair, her face half hidden against her hand. I sat across from her, still unsure how silence could feel this gentle. The night before hadn't been dramatic or perfect, no grand declarations, no promises whispered in the dark. Just honesty. Two people who finally stopped pretending they weren't drawn to each other. She looked up at me now, a faint smile pulling at her lips. "You didn't run," she said. "Would it have changed anything if I did?" "Maybe not," she said softly. "But it would have hurt." I moved closer, not because I'd decided to, but because sitting any farther away didn't make sense anymore. Her hand rested on the table, fingers tapping lightly, a nervous rhythm she probably didn't notice. I covered it with mine. She stilled. There it was again, that quiet charge, the same one that had followed us through every near touch, every almost. But now, it didn't scare either of us. "You still think this is a mistake?" I asked. She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the window where the street shimmered in new light. "Maybe," she said. "But some mistakes feel a lot like truth." Her voice cracked a little on the last word. I reached up, brushing my thumb along her cheekbone. She leaned into it without thinking, her breath catching just slightly. The kind of sound that stays in your chest. "We're going to be judged," I said. "Of course," she replied, half a laugh in her tone. "They'll say I should know better. That you'll move on. And will I?" Her gaze met mine, calm, steady. "If you do, I'll still be glad we didn't stop when it mattered." There was nothing else to say after that. The world outside went on, cars passing, doors closing, the quiet hum of another day, but the air between us had shifted. I stood, took her hand, and she followed without hesitation. No drama, no goodbye in disguise. Just two people walking toward the small couch near the window, sitting close enough for warmth to replace words. Her head rested against my shoulder. My fingers found hers again, lacing together easily, naturally, like it had been waiting to happen. She sighed. "Do you regret it?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. "No. I finally understand it." She turned slightly, her lips brushing against my temple, not quite a kiss, just a quiet acknowledgement. The kind that feels more real than anything else. Outside, the light grew brighter. Inside, neither of us moved. Whatever tomorrow looked like, complicated, uncertain, imperfect, this moment was ours. And it was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?